Haram sir. And you bundu hijay. Lay jasai. Kam jalla chasan na hijay. Kwana anap to munjina. Dai chulu. La karenji daunji achulo. La chondindi akagwadana.
Some people, when you don't have money, you don't have anything, you will track on your feet. Whereby if you come tired, you will stay in the bush there. Then some children, they die in the bush because of the nothing to eat and no medicine there. Then some women, they deliver in the bush.
The abuses by Boko Haram are some of the most lethal that we have seen throughout Africa. I mean, I would say Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Kenya are some of the most brutal insurgent terrorist groups operating out there, and have unleashed like massive violence and terror and fear among citizens. And I think what's particularly striking about Boko Haram is that the effect of its targeting is quite widespread, that schools are affected and markets and newspapers and government buildings and moderate imams. Everybody is vulnerable to Boko Haram's lethal violence.
O governo da Nigéria adiou por um mês eleições presidenciais programadas para 14 de fevereiro. Alegou que precisa concentrar esforços no combate ao grupo extremista islâmico Boko Haram, ativo no nordeste do país, onde a população é de maioria muçulmana. Meia verdade, reagem os críticos, que apontam a ineficácia da repressão governamental aos extremistas há vários anos e denunciam como verdadeiro motivo para o adiamento das eleições o medo das urnas. O atual presidente, o cristão Goodluck Jonathan, e seus aliados no poder temem perder a reeleição para um ex-general muçulmano linha dura que já foi ditador e promete combater de verdade o Boko Haram. O grupo extremista controla uma faixa de território no nordeste da Nigéria e já declarou o estabelecimento ali de um califado, regido por leis islâmicas, conforme a interpretação de seus líderes, sobretudo o chefe, Abubakar Shekau. No dialeto Hausa da área, Boko, que significava falso, tomou o sentido de educação ocidental. E Haram quer dizer proibido. Ou seja, o movimento proíbe a educação da população com valores ocidentais e insiste na adoção apenas de ensinamento extraído do Alcorão e da tradição oral muçulmana. Neste ponto, se parece com a ideologia do grupo Estado Islâmico, que age em parte do Iraque e da Síria, com grau semelhante de violência.
Just a figment of their imagination. Just go into your house and say, I've taken over and that this is Garon Republic and that's all. With nothing to offer, no form of government. But initially, unfortunately, they were applying, so we were told, applying Islamic law that the people they caught looting were summarily tried and then executed according to Islamic law. That was the information the government received.
Well, Boko Haram has existed since around 2002, and they began as a religious movement opposed to secular authority in Nigeria. And they were able to recruit large numbers of followers by speaking out against perceived corruption among Nigeria's political elite, and also decrying the marginalization of the Northeast.
Le vrai nom, c'est Jama'atu al-Isuna lidawati wal jihad, c'est-à-dire la communauté des fidèles du prophète pour les enseignements du prophète et la guerre sainte. Boko Haram, ce n'est pas leur nom. Donc déjà, ça vous donne un peu le côté énigmatique et obscur de ce groupe, mais qui est né au départ dans le nord-est du Nigeria, dans la ville de Maiduguri, sous l'égide d'une sorte de gourou spirituel, Mohamed Youssouf. Et au départ, c'est une secte. Alors c'est une secte qui est très radicale dans son discours, dans son rejet de l'État d'inspiration néocoloniale, et c'est une organisation qui effectivement considère, comme d'autres groupes salafistes, d'autres groupes fondamentalistes en Afrique ou dans le monde arabe, et considère qu'il faut appliquer la charia, qui est la loi de Dieu, la loi de l'islam, et que pour l'appliquer correctement, en aucun cas, la loi de l'islam, la loi de Dieu, finalement, ne pourrait être mise sous la tutelle d'une constitution écrite par les hommes. en l'occurrence la constitution de la République fédérale du Nigeria. Donc il en découle, selon eux, que finalement, pour appliquer correctement la charia, il faut changer le régime politique. Donc il y a ce discours très fort qui existe, mais sur toute la période 2002-2009, en fait, ce groupe, il y a quelques affrontements avec les forces de sécurité, mais ce n'est pas un groupe terroriste. Hein. Ils ont pignon sur rue, c'est-à-dire qu'ils ont une mosquée à Maiduguri, on peut aller les voir, on peut discuter avec eux. Ils sont très radicaux dans leur discours, mais ce n'est pas un groupe clandestin. En 2009, il y a une répression de l'armée, et l'armée va attraper Mohamed Youssouf, le leader de la secte, et ils vont le donner à la police qui va l'exécuter sans autre forme de procès. C'est une exécution extrajudiciaire.
Avec centaines d'autres personnes.
Alors avec des centaines d'autres personnes, mais surtout du coup le groupe plonge dans la clandestinité, ce qui n'était pas le cas avant, et devient extrêmement radical. À ce moment-là, il va effectivement non seulement s'armer, mais il va commencer à attaquer les minorités chrétiennes, ce qui n'était pas le cas avant, et il va commencer à perpétrer des attentats terroristes, et notamment des attentats suicides. Donc il faut bien voir que la situation horrible dans laquelle on est aujourd'hui, c'est aussi largement un effet de la mauvaise gestion de cette secte par l'État nigérian, qui n'a rien trouvé de mieux à faire que de tuer le gourou spirituel, sans parler même de négociation, et qui du coup a fait plonger dans la clandestinité ce groupe, et au sein du groupe, il y avait des gens qui étaient prêts à la négociation, ceux-là ont été éliminés, et les plus durs, les plus radicaux, sont réapparus comme une espèce de monstre terroriste sous l'égide d'Abou Bakar Shekau que l'on connaît aujourd'hui.
What is the appeal of a group like that to the population of Nigeria?
Well, I think in the early days it was that message of combating corruption, seeking to create a new society that was based on religious principles. However, it's clear that popular support, such as it was for the group, really dried up since they began this campaign of violence. I mean, civilians in northeast Nigeria now live in constant fear of what have become daily attacks by Boko Haram.
Os militantes do Boko Haram não hesitam no uso da brutalidade para alcançar seus objetivos, intimidar as pessoas, punir quem não os segue. Sua ação de maior impacto internacional foi o sequestro de 250 meninas de uma escola secundária no vilarejo de Chibok, em abril do ano passado.
The military knew about that attack more than 4 hours in advance, but did not take sufficient steps to protect the civilians living in that town.
Levaram as moças para territórios sob controle do grupo, sob a ameaça de serem oferecidas em casamento para os militantes ou tornadas escravas. Com exceção de algumas meninas que conseguiram escapar, a maioria continua desaparecida.
Well, the girls have not been rescued. We believe that they have been married off. We believe that there are more than 200 who are living in captivity. And in fact, Human Rights Watch did a report in October where we talked to some of the girls and we talked to girls who had escaped captivity and then talked to them about their experiences and what they had endured. And we found out that girls who have been abducted by Boko Haram typically are forced to convert, forced to work, forced to get married, forced to serve in military operations, and then are raped. When they come back to their homes, they rarely receive the psychosocial support that they need. We know that there have been efforts to provide military advice and intelligence to the Nigerian government, but that has not yet resulted in the freeing of the majority of the girls who were taken from Chibok. And it's a very complicated operation because any such operation could inevitably endanger the girls who were taken.
What happened to the world's commitment to help Nigeria?
Well, you're right, there was a lot of good faith at the time, and the Bring Back Our Girls campaign generated a lot of interest. I think part of this is that Boko Haram is a very tough insurgent group to deal with. It's now very well armed, it's controlling territory in the north, and it's not well known in terms of how it operates. One of the interesting things actually about the abduction of the girls who escaped was that they had very good intelligence about the group, but the Nigerian security forces never actually interviewed the girls to find out how Boko Haram operates. When does it take the girls? Where is it based? Where? And so that's a real deficit. I think Part of this comes down to the Nigerian government in terms of the conduct of its own security forces and also the government's willingness to accept offers of help by its neighbors and by the international community.
So it's mainly the fault of the Nigerians?
Yes, I would put the onus more on the Nigerians than on the international community. I think that there were genuine offers there to help, and what I've heard from contacts in the U.S. government, among other places, is that the Nigerians were not always so willing to accept that kind of support or advice. And we see that even now in terms of deliberations on the UN Security Council and efforts by regional nations to root out Boko Haram.
Enquanto isso, o governo central da Nigéria não vai além de declarações genéricas de que continua a procurar as jovens sequestradas, em meio à descrença geral de que tenham de fato se esforçado para isso ou para qualquer forma efetiva de combate aos extremistas, em clima de corrupção geral entre oficiais e falta de recursos das tropas.
Que vous avez aujourd'hui, officiellement, presque 6 milliards de dollars par an dans le budget de l'État pour les forces de sécurité. Et on sait très bien qu'une grande partie de cet argent ne va pas sur le terrain. C'est-à-dire qu'il est détourné. Donc les soldats qui combattent dans le Borno contre Boko Haram n'ont pas les armes, n'ont pas les munitions, parfois ils ne sont pas payés, donc ils se mutinent. Il y a eu des mutineries, il y a eu des procès de soldats mutins qui ont été condamnés à mort et qui se rebellaient contre leur hiérarchie. Malheureusement, l'appareil coercitif du Nigeria, qu'il s'agisse de la police, des services secrets ou de l'armée, a pour habitude de tirer dans le tas. C'est-à-dire que lorsqu'ils doivent gérer des conflits armés, eh bien ils tirent sur tout le monde, donc ils tuent énormément de civils. Et quand vous tuez des civils, soit vous poussez même des gens à rejoindre les rangs de Boko Haram pour chercher protection, ça a pu se produire, soit en tout cas, vous ne créez pas un lien de confiance. Or, dans les guerres asymétriques contre des groupes terroristes invisibles comme Boko Haram, il n'y a aucune chance de gagner si vous n'avez pas le soutien de la population locale.
What puzzles a lot of people outside Nigeria is the reluctance of an army of 130,000 soldiers to confront a group of such as Boko Haram. Why the reluctance?
We found a number of problems in the military's approach to the crisis. We've documented systematic failures in this approach. So what the Nigerian army will do is go to communities where it believes there are Boko Haram members, round up all of the young men, force them to sit down, take off their clothes and pass them in front of hidden informants. And based on spurious evidence, these people will say, yes, this is a Boko Haram suspect, or no, they aren't. And this can be evidence such as, a mark on someone's shoulder indicating that they've been carrying a weapon and therefore are a Boko Haram member. So they arrest large numbers of young men through these techniques and keep them in what are really appalling conditions in military detention facilities. So they're denied access to lawyers, to their families, they're not brought before courts, and the conditions in military detention are sometimes so bad that we've documented large numbers of people dying as a result of lack of adequate food and water, not being in sanitary conditions that mean that disease is rife. We released a report back in October 2013 that found in the first 6 months of that year alone, more than 950 people died in military custody.
O Boko Haram renova seus ataques no nordeste da Nigéria e já fez incursões a países vizinhos, como Chad, Níger e Camarões. Matou centenas de pessoas além fronteiras.
Quand on prend leur zone, là où ils sont actifs, dans le Borno, les frontières sont complètement poreuses. Donc dès le départ, ils sont également au Niger, au Tchad et au Cameroun. On ne peut pas parler d'une internationalisation. Simplement, ils sont dans une zone où les frontières, en fait, elles n'existent que sur le papier.
Fotos de satélite obtidas pela organização Anistia Internacional há poucas semanas mostraram a destruição da cidade de Baga, com mais de 3.000 prédios arrasados e queimados pelos combatentes do Boko Haram.
The week when the Charlie Hebdo slaughter happened, that week apparently Boko Haram killed 2,000 people. And a lot of people said, oh, look, everybody's talking about Je suis Charlie and nobody's talking about Boko Haram because we don't care for Africans. Is that how you see it?
It's not how I see it. First of all, we don't know how many people were killed by Boko Haram in the latest attack on Baga. I need to say that Baga had actually been assaulted and hit by Nigerian security forces nearly 2 years ago. So this was not the first time that Baga had been attacked. The numbers are ranging wildly between dozens and thousands, and we just don't know without being there and going to the morgue and talking to family members. And right now the area is way too dangerous and insecure for us to do that. That said, Boko Haram is not so much a terrorist group, although it does commit atrocities, but it is engaged in an insurgency against the Nigerian government, and one that's been taking place for more than 5 years, 10 years actually. So it's not quite the same thing. I think it's true that what happened in France was certainly news, and it was gripping, and it was good that people focused attention on it. I think that where the comparison resonates with me is that we've become almost immune or inured to the idea that death happens in such a regular basis in Nigeria, and that dozens of people can die and hundreds of people can die, and it's just another day. And the lack of response by the Nigerian government itself to its citizens in the north, I think really speaks to that. And I know that President Jonathan was widely criticized for sending out condolences to those who were attacked in France, but yet hadn't even managed to muster the same kind of sympathy for northern residents who are not his traditional base.
On se demande aujourd'hui si le Nigeria ne se dirige pas à une partition entre le nord et le sud. C'est une évaluation trop simpliste?
C'est extrêmement simpliste. D'abord, il y a des très grosses minorités chrétiennes dans le nord, il y a des très grosses minorités musulmanes dans le sud. Et deuxièmement, il faut savoir que les musulmans du nord ne veulent pas d'une partition. Pourquoi? Pour une raison très simple, c'est que le pétrole, qui fournit 95% des recettes de l'État, se situe dans le sud. Donc si vous faites une partition, le nord à dominante musulmane va se retrouver asséché économiquement. C'est une zone sahélienne, on se rapproche du désert, du Sahara, les ressources ne sont pas aussi abondantes que sur la côte, que sur la façade atlantique, c'est là où il y a la base industrielle du Nigeria.
Is Nigeria like a fragile democracy?
I don't see Nigeria as fragile. It's a very populous country, it's got a strong civil society, it has strong institutions. I think the military and the security forces are problematic, have committed abuses, have more holes and weaknesses than I think has been previously understood, but I don't see Nigeria as fragile. That said, it is a country cobbled together by colonialism with some distinct parts in terms of ethnicity and religion, and so I think that contributes to the perception perhaps that it's not as stable as it could be.
Embora mais ativos no nordeste da Nigéria, onde conhecem melhor o terreno e a população muçulmana, os extremistas islâmicos agem também na parte central do país, onde bombardeiam igrejas, atacam quartéis e postos policiais, além da sede da ONU na capital, Abuja.
En fait, le Nigeria a connu des affrontements entre musulmans dès les années 80, non?
Effectivement, une autre insurrection qui a d'ailleurs été beaucoup plus mortifère. C'était une insurrection menée par un autre prophète qu'on appelait Maïtatsin, qui lui venait d'un autre pays, le Cameroun, mais qui s'est installé dans la plus grosse ville du nord à dominante musulmane du Nigeria, à savoir Kano. Et là, il y a eu une insurrection, il y a eu une répression de l'armée qui a tué entre 4000 et 5000 personnes en 10 jours, c'était en 1980. Donc on voit qu'il y a eu d'autres phénomènes où finalement l'islam a été la bannière, le porteur d'un message de contestation contre un État corrompu.
Estimativas de organizações humanitárias indicam que mais de 10.000 pessoas foram mortas pelo Boko Haram nos últimos 5 anos. Impressiona também a situação dos refugiados. Até agora, 1.500.000 pessoas tiveram que deixar suas casas.
The situation is critical and alarming if you consider that 1 every 2 person crossing the border is food insecure and 1 out of 3 children is malnourished.
Quem consegue fugir dos ataques do Boko Haram conta que os rebeldes chegam na calada da noite com os rostos cobertos e com gritos de Deus é grande. Estas imagens foram feitas na cidade rural de Bosso, na fronteira entre a Nigéria e o Níger, que abriga vários refugiados. Um dia depois, a cidade foi atacada.
We know already there are more than 10,000 refugees and displaced people waiting for the food assistance that was due this week. I think the situation becomes even more challenging as we have no possibility to reach Bosso.
Boko Haram practices a form of Islam that would be unrecognizable to most northern Nigerians. Northern Nigeria is predominantly Muslim, but what Boko Haram wants to do is to impose a very backward, very strict interpretation of Islam that doesn't resonate with most people, and most citizens see Boko Haram's tactics as being utterly profane rather than in keeping with their religious tenets and practices.
La pauvreté seule ne permet pas d'expliquer pourquoi il y a Boko Haram qui serait aujourd'hui dans le nord-est du Nigeria, parce que la pauvreté, vous l'avez également dans le centre-nord, dans le nord-ouest. Donc la pauvreté en tant que telle, c'est juste la toile de fond, si vous voulez. Maintenant, quand vous rajoutez à la pauvreté des éléments comme la corruption, l'exécution extrajudiciaire du chef d'une secte, quand vous rajoutez les pratiques mafieuses du gouverneur de l'État du Borno, où il y avait Maïdougouri, quand vous rajoutez tout ça, vous arrivez effectivement à la situation où on en est aujourd'hui, dans le nord-est. Donc la pauvreté en tant que telle ne suffit pas à expliquer pourquoi cette rébellion est devenue aussi terroriste qu'elle l'est aujourd'hui et aussi inquiétante finalement.
At that time.